work for us. Are we here? Can you see me? Let's see how it goes. For those of you who are able to see and hear, feel free to let me know in the chat. Sometimes there is a delay there, but I see some folks already chiming in with their takeaways because I did send this into the chat when we just got started there of what did you guys think of the Level Up event? And some of you have already shared your feedback, which I want to spotlight here as we get the stream rolling and we confirm all of our audio and tech is working out. So New Territory Media says, solid virtual event, pick up a few tips, but would have loved a deeper dive. Darby says, as a Miro user, I'm really interested in the whiteboarding feature. See, that's a bit of a teaser as to what's to come in this recap, and love the violinist. I agree with you. Claire says, thought it was really cool that they launched whiteboards during the event. Some sessions were awesome and others could have gone deeper. First time attending and it was great. So glad to hear that. And thanks for the rest of you who are joining us here for this recap. Shauna adds in, Tony Hawk was a bit of an odd choice for a productivity conference. All of these things are very valid sentiments. And today in this live stream here, we're going to be recapping all of the things. So if you were not someone who attended Level Up, you're not going to feel left out. You're going to understand what Shauna's talking about with Tony Hawk here soon. I'm actually going to go through piece by piece, the stream agenda for today. So this is what happened during the Level Up conference. When we kick off the stream, as everyone's coming in here into the room, we're going to be going through each event that took place. I'm going to do my best to give you a recap of what it was about. But that is going to be easier said than done because at the onset, I want to let you know that this Level Up event that just ended here was a multi-track event, meaning there were multiple simultaneous events happening in all of these different categories. So I will try my best to give you the key takeaways from each session because I did try to pop in and out of, I think I got every session, but there are naturally going to be key points I missed. So as I go through each of these sessions, please do contribute using that chat and let us know your takeaways from each segment. Our outline here for the stream is going to be starting off with a what happened, just going through the agenda so you know the key moments. Then we're going to go over to some reaction from ClickUp consultants, some peers in this space, what their thoughts are as people who work in ClickUp every day. And then I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your reactions and I will wrap up with some of my own takeaways. So that's the outline here for the stream. We're going to try to keep it to an hour or so, fingers crossed. So yeah, let's just get started. The kickoff of the Level Up event started off with a kind of a pregame show. And because ClickUp was using a new kind of virtual event software, they were able to add these kind of tables structure. And I wish I would have got a screenshot of the actual table layout. But basically, it allowed you to click into different rooms and learn more about a specific topic. This actually gave us a bit of a teaser as to what was going to be covered through later sessions. A lot of the breakout rooms that filled up this first 2-hour block actually became the topic of future sessions. So one of the tables that I went to first off was the ClickUp Professional Services one. So I'm going to go through some of these key ones and then we'll talk about the keynotes and so on. The ClickUp Professional Services was not off to a great start when we joined the event here. This event is really talking about how ClickUp is building service revenue streams off of their platform. And I'm going to talk more about this as we get through because it really did come up later on. But ClickUp is not only looking to monetize your use of the ClickUp platform, they're also looking to offer services helping you use the platform. So a bit of a funky incentive situation there, but there are a bunch of, I wouldn't say new, many of them aren't new, but there are a lot of revenue streams that ClickUp started to mention in here. Some of them are just retention activities, such as the ClickUp coaching that they launched last Level Up. Other professional services that we're going to talk about as we get into today were things like admin services. Now, to me, that kind of caught me off guard, and so I want to explain what that is before we get into the weeds of it. As part of the professional services of admin services, ClickUp is actually going to be offering the service of monitoring and managing your ClickUp account. Not quite sure how that's going to work, and they did go deeper into it in a later presentation, but that was the first table I went to when I was starting my Level Up journey. And it was an exciting way to start my day. After that, I went to a ClickUp sales table to see what they had going on in terms of, what was this table all about? This wasn't the most helpful of sessions. This primarily focused on how to pitch ClickUp for enterprise use. Now, if any of you joined me for the recap of last year's Level Up, we were forecasting that ClickUp would start to focus more and more on enterprise sales. This event, starting with this table, which was my second stop of the day, definitely emphasized this. This was stuffed with those kinds of, I don't want to say useless, they're important, right? But those kinds of jargons that the jargon you put into a conversation just to let people know that you know the jargon, it was just stuffed. Like, I think it was like someone was reading an SEO optimized blog post. And that was what the ClickUp sales table was all about, talking about how to use ClickUp at these larger, at a larger scale. So ClickUp University is the next table I went to, and this was a pretty shocking one for me as someone who's been creating content about ClickUp for 18 months. This was kind of like a, whoa, blindsiding announcement. ClickUp is actually going to be releasing and has released their own free university. So if you think of like a free Udemy course, a free Coursera course, it's that kind of thing. Or like a LinkedIn Learning. ClickUp has their university live, and you guys can check it out right now. It is available for you there. You can go to their skill jar? Yes. Okay. Making sure I'm saying that right. You can go to their skill jar site and actually start one of 2 courses to learn ClickUp for free, which is fantastic if you're someone who's looking to just get started. I think I have this open here, so let's take a quick preview. Oh, if it'll load. Maybe it's crashing because we're all checking it out at the same time. Okay. Maybe there's a lot of interest in the university, guys. Let's calm down. So I'll just explain here. The ClickUp University is an online course with 2 major tracks based on the user type. So there is either the admin track or the member track. As you saw my comment probably at the onset here, as Anne pointed out in the chat I had with her in the meantime here, there is not a guest track for this academy, for this university. So right now it is either admin or member. And if this ever loads, which it might not, just take my word for it, it exists. You can take this course and go through a few modules about how to use basic features. I did go through and took about, I want to say, maybe half of the admin course, skipping through some of the videos. And, it reminds me a lot of the ClickUp webinars. So for people who like that kind of content, this is going to be right up your alley. It is really good in the fact that it is, they have the inside scoop on what features are coming out. And the rest of us, like finding out about this today, the rest of us are finding out months and months after a decision has been made. So I do think that's going to give it a real edge as a learning option. And definitely something to check out, especially as more updates are coming. They've already announced certain expansions that they're going to be doing. But we knew this was eventually going to be a thing, and voila, here it is. And that was one of our first, not even our first, this is our second surprise of LevelUp. So that is going to be ClickUp University. You can check that out now. I believe it's clickup.com/university, but it seems to be down right now. Lucky us. They did mention at this point in time that ClickUp certifications were also coming. Now, this is kind of interesting because I have long said, you've heard me say on the channel, not a very popular opinion, but the ClickUp Vetted Consultant Program is currently not a vetted program. Now, it's changed very recently, so it might have changed since the last time I've gone through and seen the questions. But for the longest time, their vetted consultant program was not a vetted program. It was a registration program where you simply filled out some information and you were vetted. So now that they're actually looking at taking that higher step of responsibility by certifying people, that coming soon, that'll be really interesting to see how that either works with or works against the vetted consultant program that already exists and continues to have that bar raised for what that actually means. Because again, it has evolved in what that meaning is. And Stacy, looks like you're right with me there. I was onboarding a new client today and had to figure out ClickUp University from them. Yeah, I get that, Stacy. That's a little frustrating. But hey, we know it's here now, and here's a sneak peek that I did pull in from earlier today when the site was up about what that course actually looks like. And yes, Evie, it has been in the talks for a while now. We didn't know when it was going to happen. I at least thought the certification was going to be for vetted consultants, but from what they gave as their first example was actually a certified ClickUp admin as their first certification option, which was just interesting. I don't know why you would want to be certified as a ClickUp admin, but if you want to, now you can. That takes us to the next session, and I'm going to just jump through this one pretty quickly because I'm just going to be honest and say ClickUp, well, they started this event at, I think, 7 a.m. their time. Evie's in that time zone. She can confirm for me, but pretty sure it was 7 a.m. In Pacific time. That's early. And their technology plus the, nationwide or global, I'm not sure which, Comcast outage did not agree with them. So these first sessions, pretty much everything before 9 a.m. was non-existent. I, like many people in the chat, spent 90 minutes at the event hearing no video and hearing no content. So this is kind of the best summary I can think of these first sessions. Comments like still waiting, I don't know what's going on, no one's being a jerk, just getting frustrated. The chat wasn't in a good mood in this early step. And you know what? It happens. It's a virtual event and it's a hybrid virtual event. ClickUp had a lot going on, but it was a little messy that morning. It got to the point where the chat was the main commentary, was the main feature. So I'm just pulling in some of the best moments. And for those of you who see your avatar here, thank you for contributing to society and entertaining the rest of us, as you can see here. So I really don't have a lot to tell you about these earlier sessions. They will be on the replay. I saw clips of them when I was browsing YouTube because many of these replays are up, but I have no idea what was actually supposed to be covered for the first 2 hours of the day. And yes, okay, good. So we got some confirmation. It was 7 a.m. and it did seem a little chaotic. But look, good news is you can head over to ClickUp's YouTube channel and find a lot of those replays, I think, hopefully those ones, to fill in on what the heck was supposed to be happening during this time. Finally, at around, let's say 9 a.m., this starts. So we start to have the hype show with the live DJ who was doing their best to keep things moving, even though the virtual event was a little bit stressful. So this was the first time after about, 90 minutes of being in the event. Oh, actually 120 minutes, 2 hours of being at the event where we started to have sound. And that is when LevelUp, in my opinion, actually started and things got a whole lot smoother from here. So I promise we're going to have actual good news for you as we go through. So once we got into the 9 a.m. session, I shouldn't say it's all smooth sailing because there is some more issues that come up here in these later sessions, but then we get to the actual content. So the first segment I want to highlight here is the Coaching 101. Now, the names of these sessions are probably not going to line up with the agenda because ClickUp's names in the event at this point in the day were not lining up with the agenda, so I'm trying my best to describe them. So the first one here is actually, it says Coaching 101. I think it was actually a view commentary. So this presentation was talking all about how you can use views to navigate kind of a basic user experience. This would be a great tutorial to watch on the replay for anyone who's trying to learn the basic features of ClickUp and really struggling with understanding why views are valuable and why views are not an optional feature if you're going to be using ClickUp. As it says here, it wasn't quite clear the overall position of this video because we were still fighting with tech issues, which is unfortunate because I'm hearing that there's some really good energy in these presentations, but unfortunately it didn't fully come through virtually. Coaching 201 content, again, not sure what this is about. We had some issues getting this connected, so I'm going to skip right along. The next one is where it really gets interesting, and this is where it chimes into, I think Kai put this comment in here. Yep. Wow, ClickUp professional services. I mean, is ClickUp going to do our work now? Yes, maybe. So that's what this presentation was all about, which was, again, another surprise for me and maybe some of you as well. When I got into this session, choosing the right admin for your ClickUp account, Tim in this session was talking about kind of positioning himself as an expert in the space, a lot of time spent on establishing that expertise. That was refreshing because I think in past events, people have wanted to see more people with real life experience. So cool. But then this presentation started and this kind of visualization, which I know is a bit blurry here because most of the presentations were a bit blurry in the live stream where I was taking these screenshots. But Tim was talking about the implementation journey of a new ClickUp account, both from the initial idea of, oh, we should use ClickUp, to the ongoing service of maintaining and owning that ClickUp account. Now, this is really strange because the presentation, at least as I was hearing it, maybe I'm biased. Actually, I'm definitely biased. But to me, when I was hearing Tim talk, I immediately was thinking, okay, he's talking about self-reliance, how important it is to have buy-in, why, change management is important to come from the inside out. And then it kind of took a twist. And all of a sudden, I hear not a sales pitch, or at least they say it's not a sales pitch directly, but kind of a sales pitch for the ClickUp admin service. And shocking, just absolutely shocking. I had already seen this teaser from those rooms I told you about earlier on in this stream, But when I actually saw this explained or heard this explained, it was kind of shocking. ClickUp is indeed looking to provide services, from what I gather, to act as an admin. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit better. Not really, so just bear with me. I'll read it off. They're going to act as an admin in your system, to be the admin of your ClickUp account, to design, build, and deploy new workflows, which is an extension of what their enterprise onboarding already does, and optimize existing workflows, and work with experts to provide user training and documentation. So this is really interesting. And this is going to lead into a whole theme I'll have at the end when we're talking about big takeaways. But this is going to put ClickUp in direct competition with OBM service providers and vetted consultants with ongoing support packages. If you are someone, though, that is looking to have ongoing support on the maintenance of your ClickUp account, well, ClickUp might be able to help you. We do not have a clear idea yet on pricing. The question was asked multiple times in the chat. But much like last year, ClickUp was censoring, I guess, I can use that word, censoring the chat. So I know I asked a question, I think 2 or 3 times there, actually about specific things about this coaching program, and all of my questions were deleted. So who knows what the actual outcome will be, but there's definitely a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to what this admin service is going to be, who is it going to be for, and what is it going to cost. So still shocking to me, at least, to see them going into this whole service space. As New Territory Media says, sounds like it's targeted to enterprise. Yes, but also I'm not so sure. With the introduction of Business Plus, I'm not sure how many things are going to stay at that enterprise level and whether these are going to be a la carte bookable services. I could see a lot of arguments for having this be something that you could be a true revenue stream beyond just being a bonus. Because right now, up until this date, admin services was never a thing, but ClickUp did describe it as account management and enterprise onboarding. But this new term of admin services makes me think it's something that's going to become more formalized, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Now, that brings us to the other sessions of this time slot, which was Master the ClickUp Hierarchy. This was a great presentation. I mean, great energy, but I didn't really have a whole lot to say other than, it was, if you want to learn how the hierarchy works, check this out. That's pretty much it. So a little bit of a good, I would say, beginner session there. All right, let's see what's going on in the worries me because I was going to offer VIP days for social media managers. Kelsey, I get it. There's a lot of confusion here. ClickUp tends to do these big announcements, and we have to roll with them afterwards. And yeah, Evie, I know we would agree on this, but there is definitely a difference, but it's still interesting. And I think it's a splintering of attention that will be interesting to see how it comes to life. Now we're going to move on to the welcome here. The Welcome to Level Up kicked off with the actual live event, and this is where we've heard ClickUp's theme song. So LevelUp has its own theme song. Who knew? But we also found out during this event that ClickUp has its own Spotify with a whopping 35 monthly listeners. So, we have 56 people in this stream right now. Go listen to this. We'll triple their Spotify listenership. But so ClickUp has made their own album. And this was debuted at the welcome of LevelUp, which again, I think someone has said in this chat here that they were really trying to make it fun. I think this is one of the ways that they were doing that. Welcome notes came off with Paul, who's kind of the MC that you're probably familiar seeing the face of on ClickUp's commercials, highlighted the 50K virtual attendees, which by the end of the day dropped to 40s, but still an impressive turnout. And then Zeb was introduced, which is the really cool news of today, with kind of the standard introduction. Now, then we get into Zeb's actual presentation, and this is the part that last year was saved till the end. This is where we're going to talk a little bit about what Zeb's thinking in terms of the future, and I'm just going to share my big takeaways from this presentation, and also check out the outfit. We are consistent in style, at least, and yeah. You guys can all listen to the theme song, and no, Stacy, I have not yet memorized it, but yeah, it's much better than the old ClickUp song. That's what I'll say. If any of you have scrolled down to the bottom of the ClickUp YouTube channel, scroll all the way down to that first video. Much improved now. Okay, so what did Zeb actually say in his presentation? What was he talking about? Well, they announced that their team has now gone remote, which is interesting because I think about 2 years ago, they were almost entirely in person in San Diego, which at the time was considered pretty novel. Zeb then talked through his personal story, and kind of the framework he used for his presentation was talking through each of his near-death experiences. Then he transitioned to talking about ClickUp's near-death experiences. Great presentation, definitely one to catch on the replay if you want to hear a little bit more about his own story. Keep in mind here, for anyone who is sensitive to this kind of stuff, the actual flickering you see behind here isn't just a cool backdrop. There was actually some pretty strong strobing in the recording, which could be triggering to some people. He noticed that there was a cluster of productivity applications on a phone, which is what inspired ClickUp, and he told us that founding story again. And one thing that was interesting is that we started to hear some specifics around the actual product vision. So this is talking specifically about 15 products is what Zeb is describing as his vision for ClickUp. Now this is interesting because he even went on to say that we are only a few features away from reaching this 15 product vision. So it's not yet clear what those 15 are. But if we think about docs, tasks, and so on, we could start to add up to that, 12 that we have now. Or sorry, 13 that we have now. Now, this is really interesting because we talked with Omar from ClickUp on the channel just a few weeks back, and he said he had no clear sense of where ClickUp is on its overall product vision. We specifically asked this question, so it's exciting to see that there is now some transparency and, openness about clarifying where ClickUp's actual long-term vision is. To see that we're so close is really interesting. And keep in mind that he did also say that once we actually have our additional features created, those last two pieces, they plan on just improving and stabilizing the products that they have. So when people are, I hear you guys complaining a lot about functionality, reliability, speed. Supposedly that's coming after those two features are coming, even though obviously they're continuing to work on that now. Talked briefly about the additional Series C funding and then talked through key features. Now I'm going to hold out on this because we're going to talk about this in the next video or in the next segment here. But the next thing I want to just talk about are these guys, which I don't think we hit on in future presentations. First off, is ClickUp verified? I thought this was a pretty weird one, so I just want to shout it out in case anyone else is interested. This is ClickUp verified. I don't really know what it is because just like you, I was kind of, ooh, surprise, this is happening this morning. But ClickUp Verified seems to be ClickUp's built-in social status meter for how active you are in using ClickUp. Now, it's not clear yet what is determining who is going to get these badges, but this is basically an internally set status that ClickUp will give certain users for being really active in the platform. In terms of the join the club area here, these are the three variables that make you a ClickUp verified, user, human, person, something. So if you want to be verified by ClickUp as being a human being, these are your three ways you can do it. We've talked about in some of the Slack channels I'm in today, you guys know who you are, about whoever Anne is, it's got some great publicity today. So Anne is our only verified human according to ClickUp. But if anyone else wants to be verified as being a human being, definitely figure out how to be like Anne. But this is a new thing, and we'll see what happens with this. This is going to go with swag, and as the Fiery Well says here, gamification. Exactly. More ways to increase the stickiness of the product, which makes sense given the looming IPO. Next up, Zeb was reiterating the emphasis on feedback, same thing we heard last year. And then they wrapped up with a talking point about emphasizing the value of enjoying the process, which you guys, if you watch our channel here, I'm all in favor of enjoying the process, and I'm glad to see that was mentioned in their remarks here. And yes, Alex, exactly, just a little badge for you to promote, to say, hey, I'm verified as a human. I know it's not actually verified as a human. That is just a joke for anyone who is not clear. I believe that you're a human, even if ClickUp doesn't say so. All right, next up, what else happened? New features. Okay. So new features is really where the meat and potatoes was of this presentation. Here we go. Here's a little snapshot, if you missed it, of what that presentation looked like. It didn't look quite this blurry, I promise. So Brian and Zach came on and told us about what the heck's going on with the brand new features coming out. So the main feature that most of the time was spent on was Docs 3.0, which is the feature that I'm using right now to make this presentation. Docs 3.0 got a lot prettier. You can find countless videos on YouTube about it. None from me yet, but there we go. Docs has a facelift, and a pre-recorded tour by a team member named Dean went through the main use cases for Docs 3.0. Interestingly, to me at least, is that we did see a lot of spotlights emphasizing student use cases. So I think I saw something like Cornell notes and economics notes is what we see here. I think that's a nice, refreshing change because in past LevelUp conferences, it has felt a little bit like software companies marketing to software companies because all of the use cases felt very sterile. But we're seeing more diversity in what use cases are being displayed here. That brings us to Whiteboards, which if you want to learn about the Whiteboards feature, which they claim to have dropped during this live stream or during this live event, unfortunately, that's actually not true. It was released earlier that morning, and actually as I was fighting with technology trying to get into LevelUp, I recorded a tutorial for the Whiteboards feature. So it actually wasn't dropped live during LevelUp, but it was released around that time. So if you'd like to see what is going on with the ClickUp Whiteboards view, check out our newest video on YouTube where we talked through, here you go, this one, where we talked through what that is. So yeah, Whiteboards. And ClickUp is also starting another social media user-generated content challenge where they're doing the hashtag ClickUp Whiteboard Challenge, which was announced as part of this, where your whiteboard view that you can create, which is going to walk through how you can, draw different things in the whiteboard, but you can submit whatever you create in that whiteboard as an artistic challenge to see if you'll get featured by ClickUp and I believe win some swag or prizes of some kind. One of the big highlights I want to say about this feature, which was super, super critical and was just barely mentioned, is in this presentation, in one of the only presentations we saw this in this LevelUp, we heard not just what is currently happening, but what is coming. And that was something we saw a whole lot more of last year. And this year, there wasn't much in terms of what is coming. So one thing I want to highlight is this part. Connectors, which are basically the lines that connect a box to a diagram, something in a flowchart, the line that connects things. In the future, they're hoping to make those connectors flexible and have a relationship or hierarchical meaning. This is something we've been asking for mind map view for a long time. So hearing them address this on stage was really, really exciting. So rather than just being able to draw a line between point A and point B and say, hey, it's a line because it's a line because it's a line, and it just being visual, these future connectors are suggesting that we could name that as a relationship of some kind. So this arrow represents subtask. This arrow represents, let's say, a custom relationship. This arrow represents a dependency. And being able to do that in whiteboard view, which is what they're telling us right here, that this is coming, maybe this could also be something we could see in other views, like, say, Gantt view or mind map view. This could be a really, really exciting release. So this is kind of some of the things that they said are coming soon to that whiteboard. And if you want to see how it is right now, you can check out our most recent video. One thing that I will also highlight here as a coming soon was the ability to actually have your main day-to-day operations occur in a whiteboard view, almost blending the line between a dashboard and a whiteboard, where you could create, sort, and organize your thoughts in a whiteboard just like you could any other task view. To me, this really stood out because, as you saw in our tutorial video that we released this morning, Whiteboards is currently listed as a doc view. So if we start to get these features, like creating and sorting tasks, using connectors in different ways, that's really going to make it confusing, whether it is a task view or a doc view, the two main categories of views we have now. But that's the new features presentation. What are you guys thinking about that one? I'm going to grab a sip of water. Yeah, no real shocks. Everyone's kind of like, all right, this is happening. Okay. Well, let's transition forward into some of the other presentations that happened throughout the day. The next one here is the customization, that just rolls off the tongue, customization of ClickUp. This video, again, is kind of like a recap of existing functions. Talks about how to use views to customize ClickUp's experience based on the person viewing things. Touched on common things like me mode and filtered views and personal views, but nothing groundbreaking, nothing future looking in this one. I agree with you so much here. I was hoping for some dashboard improvements in the sneak peeks. Me too. I was also hoping for some item types teasers. We heard a little bit of one, but not a real feature. This initial tour, talking about customization, talked about key features. And again, unfortunately, this is one that the technology kind of took away from the presentation. It was pretty hard to understand some of what was being said because it was just kind of a poor mic situation. The emphasis on a variety of use cases in this presentation and others might be best described by this message that actually came into the chat during the presentation. ClickUp's actually going to be launching ClickCoin too. Now, this actually isn't true. This is a joke, to be clear. But that was kind of the sense and the feeling because ClickUp was really trying to show tons and tons of use cases. And at a certain point, you're like, all right, really? Really? ClickUp also going to do that? Okay. I guess if you have, 400 million behind you, you could do it. But that was kind of the sense at this presentation. The second part of this presentation talked about agile use cases. Again, some more examples and inspiration, but nothing future-looking, nothing, earth-shattering. Talk about earth-shattering. The next presentation was a little bit more of a mindset piece. So this was a presentation by author Adam Grant. I should say author, professor, everything else. New York Times bestseller, Adam Grant, who talked about the key ideas behind his productivity book, Think Again. As much as the word productivity makes me want to vomit, I will just say that this presentation here was a really informative one on different ways to reflect on how you're making decisions, how you're taking things as status quo, and how you're evaluating what the right idea is. So a lot of good stuff in this one. I don't want to try to paraphrase it. I just think, get the book if you want to check it out. I did put a link here if you want to check out the actual book. I know I'm just going to be going on my reading list. But yeah, just a presentation around general ideas around productivity. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here because it's not really relevant to ClickUp, but it was relevant to the topic of productivity. So I thought that was a great one to definitely watch the replay of. So a few more presentations to just walk through. I'm going to go through these rather quickly before we transition into some takeaways. Hop-in tracks. So this was the multi-track period of the event where there are so many presentations to keep track of. I'm sure I will not do justice to them, but you'll be able to find, again, the replays of each of these on ClickUp's YouTube channel. So here we go. Hop-in tracks number 1. The marketing presentation was with Sanja, I hope I'm saying that right, founder of a marketing agency or a ads agency called Ona. And this interview, I wish I knew this dude's name. Someone here will know this dude's name. Excellent interviewer, so that was really refreshing of some of the other presentations of the day. And the conversation highlights talked about different things like hiring, management, and kind of business basics. Not really focusing on ClickUp at all here, other than just to say, hey, look, it's a real business. Hey, this real business uses ClickUp. Next up, we had the project management and ops presentation, which, again, look at this video quality compared to last year. Huge strides on that front for ClickUp. They should be really proud. But this presentation was with Stanley, who recently made the switch to ClickUp, and he talked about the before, during, but mostly after of what that transition was like. Like many of the presentations you're going to hear me talk about, this was more of a live case study for larger enterprises switching to ClickUp. After that, we had a sales presentation talking about sales use cases for ClickUp, basically emphasizing the fact that sales is collaborative, so is ClickUp. Hey, shouldn't you use ClickUp for collaboration? Evie, here we go. I think I see Evie in the chat earlier. Evie got a nice feature here, so she was talking through how she builds her CRM out with ClickUp and Integrately. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Integrately, not Integramately. I was trying to make the best of both worlds. So congrats to Evie on that feature. Next up, we have a development focus. So this is a presentation talking about ways to sprint in ClickUp. If you're not catching the drift by now, there were a lot of different use cases that we have going on here. Next, we have one on marketing. This one was pretty surface level, but talking about how you can manage content in ClickUp. That was really fast, but we don't have much time, so I'm going to try to get to it before we have Gabriel and others pop in here to give their takes. The next hop-in track, the multi-track event, went through a few other use cases. Another enterprise migration use case of the Padres. Then we went through how to build a productive marketing organization using ClickUp. Almost all of these, just so you guys know, did not actually show ClickUp in any way, except for Evie's. But most of the other ones were just theory. So I would just say you can watch these or even listen to these as podcasts. You would not be missing much. Great conversations, but not really anything related to ClickUp's future or present state. The inspiration you're going to find is more strategic and high level. Similarly, Holly's session talking about seamless collaboration, same thing. While this one did show a lot of screen shares, this was focused primarily on basic features, including relationships, which they did not get to cover much in previous LevelUps because it was relatively new. Interestingly, in this session, they did talk about OKRs using a ClickUp hierarchy, so tasks and lists and spaces for OKRs instead of the goals feature, which raised a few eyebrows, at least for me, 2 eyebrows. And next up, we have the boosting revenue by building a CRM in ClickUp session. Again, another session with a use case, which is great. This one gave some specific examples of how to build CRMs in ClickUp and really demonstrated how to lean in to relationship features and like really go ham with it. What they did not address in this session, which again was some of the filtering of Q&A, was the reliability of relationships, how easily they break, how hard they are to actually add, and how manual that process is. They didn't talk about any of that, but they did say what relationships could be, and we're really trying to emphasize that CRM use case using their suggested hierarchy. All right, almost done, I promise. Last one here, hop-in tracks. This is another multiple use case, multi-track scenario here where we had how to prioritize and structure your dates, how to run a successful content program, project management in general, and agile planning. Agile planning one really focused on the differences between ClickUp and Jira, which is a natural conversation topic for this. Sales was pretty theoretical and strategic, as were the other presentations today. So, I mean, it's just not a lot of ClickUp-based knowledge, which is why we're not spending a lot of time here. You're here to figure out what the future of ClickUp is. These sessions do not contain that, but if you're interested in these use cases and you want something a bit more practical than the typical ClickUp webinars, this would probably be a good series of recordings to check out. Okay, so I'm almost to the part where we're going to bring in some ClickUp consultants here in just 4 minutes to go over some of this. So you guys hanging out in the wings, stay tuned. But we've got one more quick little detail here, which is Tony Hawk, okay? So if anyone grew up playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater, as I did, seeing Tony Hawk was pretty cool, but as our early chat contributors said, wasn't entirely relevant to the conversation. I mean, there was some questions leading into how do you choose who to invest in, or how do you decide how to spend your time? But I think most of the conversation and most of the value was actually not at all related to productivity or ClickUp. It was about personal focus, prioritization, and even, following your passions, as cliche as that sounds. It was a pretty great interview, but not necessarily relevant if someone is looking to learn more about ClickUp. But if you guys are geeking out about Tony Hawk, or if you just want to hear about how someone can diversify from being an athlete to being multiple other things, including an investor, an entrepreneur, and so on, pretty cool interview to check out, even if it was a bit topical related to the other conversations in that day. So I have a bunch of notes here for this one. One glaring one is that just the emphasis of personal alignment and passion kind of contrasted with some of the other sessions of the show. But with that, I'm going to shut my trap here, and I'm going to invite some of the other ClickUp consultants here up to the stage because I want to hear other people's opinions. So who do I have here? Let's just bring folks on. Brace yourself. You're going to see some new guests here. So we have Gabriel here. Siobhan. Hello, and Assad. Okay, so did I do justice in this first intro? Did I miss anything besides everything?
I think you did a great job recapping.
Did any of you attend the sessions that I kind of skipped over? Was there like a favorite session that you had of the day? I'm going to popcorn people. Okay, Gabriel, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay, I mean, to be honest, I was expecting just a more traditional format, and I think ClickUp blew my mind of amount of content they get in the same time. So, for example, we hop in between the main stage and the backstage, so working as well. So I think for the public was not able to attend live, just like our Eva was able to, was actually pretty good example to how to mimic a live event with a lot of people and people moving around without actually going to the main stage. So maybe I skipped some of the main items, but I mean total kudos to ClickUp to be able to get the feeling of be there, but in my couch. So I think it's going to be like exactly. I think like that's how it felt. And I mean, for the public, they're able to be in home and be like have time to go. Oh, this item is pretty great, and then this item is pretty great. Oh, there's actually a new presentation in the main stage. I mean, like it's very very positive, and because like ClickUp going global now, and a lot of people still have some restrictions. That feeling, like the taste, I was there. So I think that for me was one of the main points today.
I want to ask Evie, who was there live, how her experience was, but I don't want to. I'm going to skip that because that's going to be like the icing at the end. So, Assad, can I jump to you, staying up late to chime in with us? What was your experience?
Hi. So there's a little bit of a lag on my side.
All good.
Yes,
here?
Layla.
Oh, yeah. If you're able to hear
I think
us, we're
yes.
able to hear
I
you.
think I agree with Gabriel. The way they did the platform was amazing. I think we could really be. It was really interactive. I was even going onto the mingles and doing my 3 minutes, even extending 6-minute conversations around the world. So I was in Canada. Then I moved over to a guy in Italy. I even spoke to someone in Colombia. So it was a really good mix, and I think it showed how global this platform is going. And the use cases was very similar, mainly business owners, startups wanting to structure and bring process to their business. So I think ClickUp did an amazing job in the way they made it very interactive. Not all of us were fortunate enough to be like Evie, who was there live on the front stage, but she represented us very well, I think. Great stuff.
All right, I'm going to transition over to Siobhan before Evie blows us away with the real life experience. But Siobhan, what was your experience? Did you have a favorite session or kind of anything that was sticking out to you?
Yeah, I think the key points to my experience were I felt like there was a lot going on and I didn't know where to be. Like I didn't know where I wanted to be. So I kept kind of jumping between sessions. So I kind of wish that all the coaching sessions were just recorded so that I could watch them when I had the break because that was a little hard. I would like catch the end of one. Um, the ones that I did attend seemed very kind of high level, surface level, like broad feature demonstrations. And so I was hoping for more in depth, but we're all kind of power users here. And so I totally understand that they kind of took a more broad approach. But again, I was hoping they'd have like an advanced track where we could go and kind of really get like good real use cases that were broader. But overall, I think they did a really great job, and I enjoyed many of the sessions that I attended. And of course, there's more that I need to watch on the replay. But
Yeah, all of us. Evie, okay. Now here you go. Rub it in. How was it? Salt in the wound. Tell us how it was in person, early morning out there in San Diego.
I got up at 5:30 in the morning. So no. Yeah, no. I get the whole worldwide approach, and my Europeans want to watch too, but don't make me get up this early. But having said that, like Speedy mentioned in the comment section, they were actually trying to watch it there. I don't try to watch it. I was there for the connection. I was there to actually charge myself up. Seeing people after how long in person. I loved the energy. I loved seeing the people, great music on there, just connecting people, just soaking up that energy. The team seemed really proud, and honestly, considering I know what's behind putting on something like this, where with listening to Gabriel, of you were actually able to feel that energy that we had there online. To me, the team did a fantastic job making it happen. Do I agree, Siobhan brought
There we go.
really getting started tracks in there, which you mentioned the views. I'm like, you wouldn't believe how many questions I still get about custom views, even though it's an everyday thing to us. I'm like, why don't you just make it a custom view? It's not a people still are not as exposed to it as we are. So I loved how they learned from last year, where it was a lot of just a sales pitch to being a little bit broader, telling us nerds what's happening, what's coming, dropping some bombs. Apparently, I knew more than other people. I knew the university was coming. I'm fine with that because it's a lot of getting started. I'm like, everybody knows it's like, I don't want to do the basic getting started, click this button, click that button. I love that there is an alarm that I'm supposed to go live with Layla, and I'm already on the show. I don't know, you know, that crazy girl on YouTube. I don't know, I'm supposed to go live with her. So I love the mix of having the entertainment, talking general business understanding. You mentioned the session with Sanja, where it's like, thank you for preaching SOPs and telling everybody that even we don't have our SOPs all in order. Probably Layla is the only one that has at least more than 75% of her SOPs done. I don't. So I did like the mix of standard mindset stuff of, here, you don't know what you don't know. Think about this, of nerding out with us, letting us know of what's coming. And hey, by the way, we have whiteboard features. I'm like, oh, we do? How is it now? I'm like, shit, I can't. Am I allowed to curse on your channel? I can't test it on mobile. I'm like, where's my laptop? I didn't bring my laptop. I just wanted to be here. So I do like where they took it, how they took it. There's always room for improvement. So the combination of the team at ClickUp making it personal and being there and being live there, and combining that with the hop-in platform, who has done Nerd Here, live streaming conference Nerd, right? Where I'm like, this is one of the few conferences that I think has made this hybrid entertaining and fun for the first time. And it just took people how long to finally make it happen? So that was my monologue.
I
It
loved
sounds
the
like it was
live
quite the day.
music.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the live music and the violin. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah, very entertaining. It was a nice break.
Can I ask, was that Level Up song and the tune and the words, was it customized for ClickUp, or is it an existing song? I wasn't quite sure.
Which one was that? Was that the couple at the end, or was that the one right in the beginning?
I think there's one like in the beginning, and between the sessions they would have like this like breakaway, like just have a pause, and they'll have the Level Up music, like Level Up in the background.
Yeah, there
Because
were
I have some people asking for it also on Spotify. Some people asking, like, is it available on Spotify? And I was like, just looking at the chats.
Yeah, as much as I could hear from the lyrics, the first one when they started out is custom written, as well as the one that was towards the end on the main stage with the drums and the blonde gal.
Is anyone else relieved that the old ClickUp song is now retired? Because I feel like no one was thinking about that, but there were some complaints that these songs were a little bit, a little cute. And I was like, man, compared to the only other ClickUp song I have heard, these are like, give them an award. Because those are still just comedic relief, those original songs that you can find on YouTube. Or was that just me?
The back in the day, we still learn how to use camera and video editing.
Yeah, those were cute.
We all start somewhere. I'm like, if I look back at my old YouTube videos, it's like, I'm only leaving them there to make people happy and give them a good laugh.
The creative department has really taken a huge leap forward, and it's really fun to see all the ads. I mean, we saw them over and over and over again throughout the day today, and they're all really fun. I'm excited for that.
Talk about creative department. Layla, you mentioned me twice. I was there with 2 videos.
Yeah, Siobhan, did you also see that? Sometimes I'm not sure because I was hop skipping around just like Assad was.
So what they did, Evie, is there were a few of you that had recorded tutorials of some kind, and they would play them kind of as filler after sessions. So when a session would end and, before the end of the time frame, then they would play one of. So I know both you and Martin were played multiple times throughout the day.
Got it. So it was probably the same video, or they cut me apart because I couldn't keep up with the time they gave me.
Well,
I
I
think
want
it
to
was the
ask for
same.
some reactions here as well, because there was so much good content, but some of the big headlines, I just want to get a quick round of the room. So whiteboard, we're going to start there because I feel like that was the big one. Gabriel, I haven't heard from you too much so far. So can I turn to you and just ask, what are your thoughts about whiteboard? New feature view released today.
Yeah, I mean, like for whiteboard is coming. Like we know there's more features there, so probably everyone already have like a beta version for testing. So I actually encourage you to do that. So me personally, I came from engineering background, so I was used to use some whiteboarding tools, for example, with charts and other main tools there. And I think one thing that struck me was like we had two options. One is 100% product finished a year from now, or a ClickUp way, release our MVP and iterate the process, enjoy the process. And I think ClickUp took the second route and say like, okay, it's not ready. Let's get this. It's actually a very cool feature. But people are in the comments like, oh, it's not like doesn't have this feature or this feature, that feature. But I think people like they don't see the big picture here, saying like ClickUp is giving you like an basically an add-on for no extra value and money-wise for you to spend, and a new feature, and this feature is going to be increase the in ClickUp speed. I think we can get this started now. So I think like the feature is actually like for a basic standpoint is actually very well connected because we still have this I have a whiteboard, now I have a page, I have to bring all the workflow to ClickUp now. I think connecting the dots now is the first right way to see ClickUp working. And I think your intro in that site level was perfect. Saying like we see the start of this whiteboard feature. So maybe seeing them moving around, see your your workflow actually flow. That's a pretty cool idea. And I think like for a 15% vision, I'm pretty happy.
I have to say, on that whiteboard, I was actually pleasantly surprised. So the moment I finally home, dog taken care of, I jumped in. I'm like, I want to test drive this. For this being a beta release, considering how minimalistic mind mapping was when it released, I was pleasantly surprised. Don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping ship yet at Whimsical simply because it's nice, easy, it's usable, everything is there that I need. We can embed it, cool, awesome. But
Phoebe, I thought of you there. I thought of you. I thought of Whimsical and yourself when I saw whiteboard. That was my question. Is it going to replace Whimsical?
It will, and considering they released this much already as a beta, I did not expect this much functionality. Did I already start my list of, okay, resizing my boxes with this much room around my fonts? Guys, dev team, we need to talk about this. But again, I'm like what Gabriel is talking about, starting with the MVP, and this is only a beta release, and you already have this much functionality in there. I'm like, what are we starting with in web design? It's less than what they released with this. So heads off for me to developers right there with this kind of beta release. You made up for what we got with mind mapping.
I feel like Siobhan's biting her tongue here because I know she has some strong feelings. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I had beta tested this during the user test a few weeks ago. And so interestingly, when I knew whiteboards were coming, I always imagined it would just be like Mind Maps 2.0. Like I thought they would take Mind Maps and then add the whiteboarding features to it. So I was really surprised when I beta tested it, how different it was. And like clearly there are some core like functions that I wish were there, but I agree. I mean, I think it's a really great start and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I just wish there was a little bit more functionality in terms of connecting it back to tasks and connecting tasks together and, you know, all of those types of things, fonts and, but, you know, we know it's going to get there and it's exciting to see that at least we can start practicing in it and then giving our feedback so that they can, you know, develop the features within it that we really want.
Now, speaking of features that we really want, I do want to pop in with at least talking about the other, I feel like bombshell feature that got like a little blip today. And I know, Assad, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because when they dropped this, I immediately thought this would be up your alley. Universal search, guys. Universal search, the missing piece, so they say, at least if I'm counting to 15 correctly, the 15th feature from what I gather is universal search for ClickUp, the ability to search and search not just ClickUp, but to search all of your integrated accounts, like your email, your Dropbox, your Salesforce. Any thoughts on this, which they just casually mentioned in a 2-minute segment during Zeb's talk?
Right? It was such a tiny little piece, but it's such a huge feature. And I wonder how they're doing it, because, I use Command E for this, but I wonder kind of how integrated it will really be.
I would also love to see how this is done, because I mean, we all know I use QuickBooks, and sometimes you create an entry and after a year or two you forget what happened, where it happened, who you paid, who was the customer. So you forget a few things, and the search is what makes QuickBooks, I think, a league of its own. So it'd be great to see how the search functionality works on ClickUp. I mean, and especially when it comes to external accounts and like the way it integrates and the right it has to speak and actually get the thing from another account, like the privacy settings. It'll be interesting to see how that search function works.
Especially because I think about each of you here, right? Working with agencies, working with small businesses, working with bookkeepers and accountants, working with content creators. Each of you are typically in industries where there's a secondary tool that's the main hub, and then ClickUp's the fill in the gaps. And I think this search, to replace Command E, that is huge, especially for folks who don't even know what Command E is yet and have never experienced this kind of search functionality. Gabriel, Yvonne, anything you want to add here?
I mean, like the first point I've seen, like this feature is so huge, so massive that we actually have to think outside ClickUp. I mean, like how other companies are going to react and see, like, can you search my items? So I think like if they are actually able to get this done, I think it's going to be like a really game changer, because I mean it's not only ClickUp now; it's going to be ClickUp ecosystem. So seeing the way like, okay, like now it's not only my ClickUp account and my stuff, it's actually my like work like as a whole, a new thing. So like maybe some companies are going to be like, oh, we're willing to do that, because ClickUp is a giant app, but sometimes like you have some other items. So these other items that's in the ClickUp ecosystem, bringing them together in ClickUp, so like, okay, we officially support this, and we are with ClickUp to make this happen. So I don't think like any like conflicting interest here. I think like everyone going to the kind of the same spot and be able to use all the tools at the same time. So for me, I think this is actually pretty huge. Again, like 2 minutes doesn't give them like the actual value for this, but like for be able to search and see it all, I think there is a promise. But I think like as always, they always feel the promises. Maybe not today, not tomorrow, but in the ClickUp speed to get there. So I think this is huge.
It'll be good. It'll be great to see it if it was working like the location. Like in a moment, you got a custom field location, and it integrates so well into your Google Maps. So imagine that seamless search on all your platforms that you signed in. I mean, that's gonna be crazy.
Layla, it reminds me of how you always talk about, let's not be the one app to do it all, but like the one app to connect them all. Like I feel like this is that huge step forward. I know you have a certain way to say it that's much cooler than how I did, but yeah, this seems like that really great step towards that direction.
Like when you look at Zap, that man doesn't know what he doesn't know. So I was always amazed by where I'm like, dude, you're never gonna make this happen. Yet he has this personality of, I don't know, let's do it. And honestly, I'm like, if they really can bring up that universal search, however technically the heck they make it happen, because when I looked at it, I'm like, cool. as you guys mentioned, where it's like, okay, you have it somehow connected in your task. I figured, cool, my Google Drive is connected so you can search it. I get it. But then it just took this from not just an attachment to everything. I'm like, if you make this happen, I'm all for it. Give me a keyboard shortcut for that.
Talk about stickiness, right? I feel like that's been a theme lately. All these features to get your data in there, your data integrated in there. So then leaving this management platform would mean you're now the manager again. And oh my gosh, no one wants that. Well, any final thoughts here? I want to just wrap us up here about on time. Any final thoughts from any of you as to like the thing that people need to look for or to check out when they're watching these replays? Assad?
Yes, I don't watch all the sessions, so I think I enjoyed I enjoyed the way they did it in terms of not making it a feature-rich conference. So they brought in more soft skills, it made you think more. So if you look at Sanja, we call it, pronounce the name Sonia in our country, but if you look at Sanja, the way she explained working towards your passion, and how teams, and if you look at Adam, the way Adam spoke about how teams collaborate when they're not together in the same room, and they're more at ease working on their own and bringing their ideas, and like not being judged on their ideas and not following like a conformity way of like a team leader who's putting the ideas in process and maybe working away, like how that helps. So I think using that soft skills, and if you go back to those type of audios, even if it's just on an audio or a podcast, it will give you an idea of how you as a CEO can actually implement those type of ideas in your business. So I think ClickUp did a great job in making it a bit of a mix, because people can get tired of just seeing features all the time. I mean, there's enough YouTube videos on how to click here and how to click there. And so I think they did a well-rounded approach on the soft skills, and they're great speakers. So on my side, I would agree. Please, if you're CEO or you're managing your own business, have a look at those videos.
I feel like that is a fantastic place to, like Assad, so profound. Thank you for that wrap up. Well, thank each of you, Siobhan, Great Girl, Evie, and Assad. Thank you guys so much for joining me here for this. And hopefully we'll see you around the channel soon and have you back on here to hear the recap before the next year's Level Up come through.
Thanks for having me, Layla.
Bye.
Oh, no.
Thanks, guys.
You're all disappearing. Oh no. Okay, now it's just me. Well, we're going to continue here with just some final concluding thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the stream. I'm going to just wrap us up with what I hope will be some interesting final takeaways. So if you missed the actual attendance live and you want to hit on what all happened, I mean, the consultants we have on here talked about so much already, but I want to talk about some subtle observations, some key observations, and my very last concluding thoughts about the overall Level Up event. So subtle observations that may be helpful to you in your day-to-day life using ClickUp from this conference is that ClickUp themselves created a notes template using a list, aka tasks, as documents, rather than using their own Docs 3.0 feature. I thought that was an interesting observation and one that might be insightful for those of you. So even though there's a lot of fanfare around Docs 3.0, for some reason, ClickUp is still not taking that their preference for their own note-taking, or at least in their public templates. It might have been due to wanting to incorporate dates, but still, I thought it was kind of unwanted questions were actively deleted from the Q&A. I mean, not just the ones I've experienced, but we saw this throughout the day. This is naturally how it's going to go, but this is going to mean there's going to be a lot of questions afterwards. Another telling small feature to notice is that almost every team member who shared their screen during ClickUp's Level Up event were using the simple layout. Now, you guys know I'm a geek for the simple layout already, but if you are not using simple layout, this is probably an argument, or at least a trend, to suggest you might want to check it out. If this is what every team member at ClickUp is using, at least in their public events, that suggests that this might be the preferred layout and may eventually become the only layout, because having 3 different sidebar layouts is probably not sustainable. Beyond that, almost every team member or employee of ClickUp was also using their browser app and not the desktop app. This is, again, telling. So if you're stuck between the ClickUp desktop app and the ClickUp browser app, maybe do as they say, not as they do, or no, the other way around. Do as they do, not as they say, and use the browser app, because that is what many of the employees were using. The next one is kind of a sad one, in my opinion, because I was hoping we'd get some bigger news on this. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting for tasks to be more than tasks in ClickUp. but it just didn't happen this year. They told us it was going to happen in last LevelUps, and in the 12 months that have followed, it has not happened. And in this session, we did not see any further development beyond that, other than a few sessions where they used the word object instead of tasks and even specifically said, hey, let's think about these tasks as objects, not using the word records like we saw last year or items like we saw the year before that, objects. So this is interesting and a little subtle thing that I think we may want to pay attention to. Next, ClickUp demoed 2 different ways of creating OKRs, or objectives and key results, during this conference: hierarchy and goals features. Interesting. There was no questions answered as to why one would use one over the other, and there was no discussion as to how goals might become more useful to actually function for OKRs. But we saw both of those layouts kind of go back and forth throughout the different sessions of the day. Yeah, Kelsey, I agree. They were so quick. Next up, snazzy new tool for their conference. I mean, we talked about this throughout the day, but I just want to highlight a little sneak peek here. This doesn't really do it justice at all, but ClickUp had a nice interface for the actual virtual event, making it more engaging. As I'm going to say, was it Assad? No, was it Gabriel? One of you lovely humans explained to us earlier on. Now, that is the subtle observations of the day. Big observations. First one, ClickUp wants to be the app to replace them all. Doesn't matter that the tagline isn't on the website anymore. We thought that was a victory, but unfortunately that is not the case. They are still trying to be the app to replace them all, and they just have 2 features, which I believe are Whiteboard and Universal Search, to fulfill that vision. Although, as Evie said, knowing what we know about the founding team of ClickUp, it's surprising to say that they would fix their vision at just 15. Who knows? Maybe that number will change over time, but that's currently where we know it to be at. ClickUp Verified, as I talked about at the onset of this recap, is your new fancy badge to prove that you are human. Not really human. I gotta stop making that joke. Next up is new features. So Docs 3.0, the whiteboard that we featured in our new video, and Universal Search. As New Territory Media said when we started this live today, solid virtual event. Picked up a few tips, but would have loved deeper dives. But man, as you could tell from the consultants who were here, this is still head and toes? Is that the right word? Way above, let's just say, way above last year's event in terms of quality and value. Some fun headlines is that ClickUp is on Spotify, and this is that fun video that that you can compare it to if you want to compare their current playlist to their past playlist. So you can check that out on YouTube. Now, just my final concluding retrospective thoughts here, which are probably going to be what people disagree with the most, but here we go. I am more than a help doc, so here's my opinion. This year, I thought it was really nice to hear that most case studies were featuring more diverse organizations, not diverse in just one way, but in industry, business size, the person who was actually speaking to those issues, we were seeing more sprinklings of agencies and service providers across all of the use cases. Whereas, again, in the past, it has felt sometimes like a software company making software for software companies. That has evolved for sure in this event. Other key takeaway for me is that we didn't hear, oh my goodness, come on, Docs 3.0. You're making me look like a fool here. No, we didn't hear any attempts at the 2022 plan, which is a difference from last year where we saw a lot more future-looking content. This year, there was very, very little future-looking content. I've told you what we had there, but this is probably for the best considering last year's predictions were just so wildly off. Nested folders, localization in several languages, item types, those were all promised during last LevelUp, but didn't happen. And that is a sour taste that they probably wanted to avoid. Next, final thought is that IPO is coming up. So initial public offer, if anyone's interested in this kind of financial stuff, we estimate that to be October 2023 or 2024 based on Zeb's interviews. Knowing ClickUp, as Evie has said in this interview, it will probably be earlier. And that is going to change a lot about how this community feels, how the tool will feel, and that could potentially, that'll be a really interesting moment. The final concluding thought, which again is not going to be a popular one, so that's why you go to this channel to hear the unpopular opinions, but ClickUp's desire to own and control key partnerships, to me, was the biggest trend of this entire conference. I don't have much of an inside scoop, just like many of you. I don't know what's going on in ClickUp a lot of the time, and when I hear a conference like this, you really get to peek behind the veil at what they find to be important. And what I noticed when we connect the dots between all the announcements today, ClickUp has a desire to reduce risk and use all the capital they've gained from investors to, in my opinion, own and control more of their key partnerships. This extends beyond what was initially just the one app to rule them all, which, I've kind of had my thing against, but not just creating in-house features, but also in-house everything else. So some examples that came up here was, rather than partnering with vetted consultants, which is a program that ClickUp has started early on, ClickUp has invested in their own employees, their own staff, to provide those professional services, including ClickUp Coaching, which is now a free service that all ClickUp users can get, as well as enterprise onboarding, which has been around but continues to scale. Nothing wrong with this, and nothing wrong with any of these, but it's a strategic choice which I find interesting. Next, rather than partnering with ClickUp service providers, again, consultants and similar folks, come on, docs. Rather than partnering with those folks, ClickUp has extended into that professional services offer, which again, more employees offering ClickUp admin services or ClickUp monitoring services, which will have interesting incentives considering how their software works, but more support and service lines being offered there. Rather than partnering with content creators, ClickUp has decided to build an in-house creative agency rather than outsourcing. And they're running a lot of contests. They just started another one today about repurposing and polishing user-generated content so that they can put their stamp on the voice. This is in absence of more partnership or collaborative outsourcing style frameworks, which actually some of the guests of LevelUp did talk about. That is not the case. That's not ClickUp's strategy here, which I thought as a business owner was rather interesting. Rather than partnering with ClickUp influencers, just influencers in general, the ClickUp verified status, ClickUp is taking ownership of who is considered verified or owner or considered an influencer. They're defining that for themselves. And finally, rather than creating a hub like we see other tools do to share links or to support other creators who are creating resources for their tool, they're choosing to do it in-house, right? So this theme just is consistent here of ClickUp University coming to life. The business reasons to bring all this in-house, oh my gosh, Docs 3.0, I can't take you right now. It makes sense, right? This is additional control, lower risk. You don't have to worry about what these other third-party people are doing, and you just have full control over the experience, right? If we're thinking, I think early on in his presentation, Zeb was quoting Steve Jobs, if we're trying to build a closed-loop system, and part of our experience is reliant on service providers, if we have those service providers in-house, we have end-to-end control of that experience. And I just think that's interesting from a business perspective as we look at this ClickUp journey that they provided during these presentations, how they are really trying to service every single moment of this entire flow. Now, of course, while this gives them more responsibility, it's also a little scary to see what this is going to, what is this going to look like? Sure, they have the funds to do this, but is the risk of executing more and more businesses, basically, more and more business models, is this going to pay off? It very well might, right? Look at how well them pulling in features and building their own versions of them are working out. But when you build various different service businesses inside your own product business, it'll be interesting to see how those all work together. So this is going to be basically their third and fourth business inside of their business. They run the risk of not being able to execute on all these grand ideas. But with 700 employees and a lot more funding coming in, maybe that's not going to be an issue. But even with money, you run the risk of spending it improperly. So rather than doubling down and getting that mind map feature functional, maybe we're spending money on training people to be ClickUp coaches. It'll be interesting to see how that payoff looks. And finally, can you imagine if any of us were trying to do all of the things? On a personal level, if we try to be good at everything, how often does that actually work? Maybe it's just me, but it doesn't often work. You need to pick your lane. And ClickUp has been very determined from the early presentations from Zeb here and in years past and in presentations past and interviews past, they don't want to pick a lane. And that's kind of the bold statement that they're making. But I think what we don't appreciate as often is how in their business model and in their revenue streams, they're also refusing to pick a lane. They are getting into courses. They are getting into coaching. They're getting into onboarding. And we'll see, what those all turn into, whether they're retention tools or revenue streams or something else. But I thought that was an interesting kind of subtext of this entire presentation of seeing ClickUp take an even non-nichier You know what I'm trying to say. Trying to take an even bolder stance. And this line from earlier today of ClickUp will next be launching ClickCoin, I thought summarized this even better. Soon they won't even want to use a regular currency. They're going to create their own currency so they're not reliant on another currency to operate. So that might be a little extreme, but who knows? Maybe not. And that is kind of my take on LevelUp 2021. How you guys feeling? You still with me? Did I lose you all from that tour? Any questions, any thoughts, any feelings, any tears? Okay, here's what Siobhan says. I just can't see how someone at ClickUp can admin a company without knowing the industry, team, processes, or culture intimately. It seems like a matter of mismatched positioning. Yeah, especially when the presentation that introduced this was expressing that exact same thing. And then they were like, but we're offering this as a service now. It'll be really interesting to see how this works, especially since many of us are aware that their enterprise onboarding and sales experience does not have the best reputation in terms of quality. Oh, and there we go. More control. This topic would be interesting to chat about further. We'll see how it goes, guys. This is just like creating your own version of Loom or trying to replace Miro, like we're seeing with this whiteboard app. When you get your nose into all these different places, it very well might pay off, and they're trying to do this unprecedented thing, but it might also not work at a certain point. But as Alex says, they have shareholders now, so they need to make money. And who knows if these new streams are intended to add a service as a service to their additional, their business right now, or if they are trying to actually just use retention tools to make their products stickier. What I've seen in interviews from ClickUp is that they are really trying to tout the number of features an average user is using and how sticky, how difficult that user finds it to leave. So when we hear things like search, additional integrations, and let's just call it like it is, the current difficulty to delete your data from ClickUp, there's a lot of things pointing to that. And I think this IPO is going to be really interesting to see what happens right after that. Thank you guys so much for this. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm glad we were able to summarize this last 6 hours of my life in just a little over an hour here. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat if you're watching on the replay. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you so much, ClickUp, for hosting this wonderful event today. Anyone wants to check out the replay, you can head over to ClickUp's YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the description below, or head here and you'll be able to find the recap. So thank you guys again so much. Have a wonderful day, all of you. And remember, as Zeb says, enjoy the process.